So I have my horizon line in, and I need to have enough room up here because we need to be able to place a sun for a guide. So let's do something really simple. I'm going to draw a post or a vertical line. Anytime I refer to a post, it's a vertical line. So I'm going to draw a post right here, like that. But more importantly, what we need to do is we need to draw where the actual light source is and where the vanishing point for that light source is. So this is going to be negative sun. So you can actually write, I'm sorry, positive sun. So you can write positive sun down here on the bottom of your paper. Or designing shadows, positive sun. And when it comes to shadows, you will actually recognize that some of the shadows that you drew in your beginning drawing class and your drawing fundamentals class, when you're drawing a still life, you're going to actually see why the shadows look the way they do. Okay. All right. So we're going to place a sun or a point right here. And we're going to draw a vertical line straight up. This is going to probably be on our, well, as long as it's about 4 or 5 inches above the horizon line, it's fine. If it's higher, that's even better. So I'm going to place mine about 5.5 inches. Its length, the actual length of it doesn't matter. But what does matter is you have a line that's quite long. The higher the sun is or the higher the light source is for your drawing, the shorter the shadows are. Or in the reverse, you can conversely, the shorter the sun is above the shorter the distance is with the sun above the horizon line, the longer the shadows are going to be. Okay, and right here is going to be the sun's vanishing point or base point. So I'm just going to put sun VP. Now to draw shadows, it's fairly easy. So we're just going to start off with a simple line. And with the sun's vanishing point or base point, let me write base point, PT. We draw a line from the sun's base point or vanishing point to the base of the object itself, or the base of the post. And the line is arbitrary. The length of the line is arbitrary until we actually use the sun. So what the sun's base point does is it creates the angle of the shadow. Okay, it creates the angle of the shadow. So when we're drawing this, when we're doing a drawing like this, we're drawing it as if the sun is high in the sky. And now we use the sun and we draw a line to the top of the post or the top of the object that we're drawing. And as it crosses the line from the sun's base point, that is, this length here is the actual shadow. Okay, we could draw another one. Put another one right next to it. Maybe a little bit lower. And we'll do the same thing. Draw a line from the sun's vanishing point through the base of that post, and then use the sun, or draw a line from the sun to the top of the post. So my shadows I'm going to do in blue. So I'm sure you guys can see already why we're not using a grid for this. And you know, keep in mind, we're not even drawing in perspective yet. These are just two vertical lines, like a vertical post. But we will. Eventually we will draw in perspective. Actually, we can actually do that. We can actually do that now. Okay, so let's do another one here. But we'll make this we'll actually make a structure out of this. We're going to use this as a vanishing point for for a 1 point perspective. And we'll just make a simple plane. Like that. Now when you look at this plane though, you'll notice something particular. It has two posts. It's a vertical plane and it has two posts to it. And when we draw shadows for this, we're going to do it exactly the same way. And we'll do one post at a time. And then after that we'll connect it. Now, one of the things that's really important to think about when you guys are drawing shadows for something that's in perspective is what vanishing point is actually creating this. Now, obviously this is 1 point perspective, and the single vanishing point is creating these lines that we know are parallel to each other that are converging to the vanishing point. Notice that the height of this vertical plane is determined by this vanishing point. And we already know that inherently, but when we're drawing shadows, we need to keep that in mind because that'll play a key role into our success drawing shadows. Okay, so let's do one post at a time. We're going to take the sun's vanishing point and draw a line through the base of that post, the left post, and then use the sun to, mine's probably going to be a little bit longer, so let me make mine a little bit shorter. Made my object a little bit too tall. There we go. Oh, by the way, the taller the object, the longer the shadow is going to be. So I made mine a little bit shorter so it'll fit on my paper. There we go. All right. So now I'm going to take my sun, I'm going to draw a line to the top of the post. Now if your shadow happens to run off your paper, that is fine. If it runs off your paper, it's perfectly fine. It is in 1 point perspective, so that can happen. Okay, so this is the length of my shadow, right there. And now I have to draw something for this post. So I'm going to take a line, I'm going to draw a line from the sun's base point or vanishing point through that post, through the base of that post, and then use the sun through the top of the post all the way down here, and that creates my shadow. Okay, so let's look and see at what we have. We have a shadow for 2 posts. What are we missing? Remember, we're drawing a shadow for this entire plane. And we have a shadow for 2 posts, but what are we missing? The top. Okay. So, how do you think we draw the top? What? Yes, we can use the vanishing point for that. Now, people usually think, oh, okay, well, yeah, we could just connect these 2 lines here, and we can just connect the top of it to draw that. And that is true. But it will be more accurate if we just line it up with the vanishing point that created the plane to begin with, because it's going to make it more accurate. And there's a good chance that you might need to use that information later on. So I'm going to encourage you that anytime that you're finishing, like let's say the top of finishing the top edge of for a shadow, make sure you line it up with the vanishing point, because it does make it quite a bit more accurate. And usually with this, I try to keep my ghost lines as ghost lines. There we go. And this is my shadow for it. I don't add tone to my shadow all that much, but I do it for some initial ones. There we go. Okay. Okay, any questions on this so far? I know some of you guys are still doing it. Yes?
So with the vanishing point, am I connecting it somewhere? Because for the right post, like I need 2 more lines. So like, I guess the flow would be like 4 lines.
So what is your question?
Which lines am I?
Okay. So obviously when you create this, you're using this vanishing point. Anytime you're creating the angle of the shadow, you're using the sun's vanishing point or base point. That goes to the base of everything that you're drawing. Okay. The sun hits the top of the post, and when it hits the top of the post, it casts its shadow all the way down to the ground. And where these 2 meet is where that corner is. So this corner is represented here. This corner is represented here, and this angle, or this top edge, is represented here. But because this vanishing point creates this edge, it also creates the edge of the shadow too. See, and you obviously can connect just these 2 points here, but you might as well connect it to the vanishing point as well. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's do another one here, just another simple plane here. Well, actually, we could put one here. We could put one back here. Okay, this one is not going to be as big. Now these are just 1 point. These are just 1 point planes. Okay, and so with this, I'm going to use you can use the sun's base point again. Draw a line through the base of this post, like that. And then use the sun again through the top of the post. To create the length of that post, or to create the length of that shadow for that post. And we'll do another shadow for this other post. So again, from the sun's vanishing point or base point. And then from the sun to the top of the post. So the shadow for this post is represented here. You can see it creeping out a little bit here. And then with this, we connect these two and line them up with the one point, or the one vanishing point that we're using, to create the top edge of this, or to create the shadow for this top edge. This is, I think we can agree that this is a 90-degree post, right? It's vertical, okay? So if we know that the shadows follow the rules of perspective in mathematics, what do you think the shadow of that post does?
Run across the ground and go straight up.
Yes. What determines, okay, I'm going to ask you a dumb question. You can give me a dumb answer. What determines the length of a shadow? We already know what determines the angle of the shadow. What determines the length of the shadow? We know it determines the angle, but what determines the length of a shadow? The sun, okay? So that little piece, or possibly, you see, you're already thinking ahead going, okay, it's probably just going to be a little piece that sticks up, which is probably right. So let's do that. So we take the sun, or the sun's base point, vanishing point, draw a line through the base of that post, hit the wall, and then go straight up. I hope you guys are right. I think you guys are right. Now it goes straight up. Now how far up does it go? That's the question. Well, that's the next question. How far up do I go? So again, what determines the length of a shadow? What determines the length of a shadow? The sun. So you do the same thing. You use the sun. You draw a line through the top of the post, and when it hits that line, you stop. So I'm going to take the sun and draw a line through the top of the post and stop. This is where this angle and the sun meets. That's a tangent. It's not planned. There's the top of the post. So it's pretty easy, pretty simple stuff so far. I mean, if you think about it, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, or 4 lines to draw a shadow. Okay, now what if it was actually another plane? What if we made like a short plane out of it, like this? So if it was something like this, we would still do the same thing. This is a post. We draw a line through the base of the post. And as it hits the corner of this vertical plane, we need to draw a vertical line straight up. And then draw a line. Now we already have, if you look really close, we already have a line that is converging to the right to the actual vanishing point. And if we draw a line from the sun to the top of the post, you'll notice that it hits exactly in the same spot. Or pretty close, but this original line is actually coming from the sun itself. So you have to be careful when you guys are drawing. This is one of the reasons why we have these lines all over the place, to show where the lines originate from, to make sure that we're following things correctly and not taking things for granted. And so I'm just going to lightly shade this. Let's create something that's a little bit more complex. Let me back up a little bit. Oh, before we do that, you'll notice that we have all of our drawing below the horizon line. Why is that? Exactly, exactly. Okay, good. That's a question that comes up. How come we don't have shadows up here? Well, we could if we had objects that were, let's say, floating. You could have shadows on them too. All right, so let's draw one that's a little bit more complex here. Just a simple plane. We'll just keep it really. Actually, let's keep it. Yeah, we'll make it more. We'll certainly make it a little bit more complex. But with this, we're going to use the other vanishing points. We can use the left and right vanishing point as well as our main vanishing point. So, and I'm not making this very tall. So it's basically like an accordion shape. Now, whatever vanishing point you're using, make sure you use it for the top and bottom. The top and bottom of your shape or your plane. So I'm only going to draw 4 or 5 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just see what happens. Just going to experiment with it and see what happens using our newfound rules of perspective with shadows. So as you guys are, whatever you guys are drawing, no matter what you're drawing, think about the kind of shadows that you would want to have. So let's say you're creating let's say you're doing an illustration for another class, and you know that you're going to need to have some shadows on it, believable shadows. Don't let the shadows hinder how you do the drawing. But at least keep in mind what your shadows, potentially what your shadows are going to look like, depending on where your light source is. And you guys have the ability as designers, as illustrators, to plan or figure out where your shadows are going to be and kind of like what you want them to look like. So at the moment, we're just drawing these random forms or shapes and seeing what these newfound rules of creating shadows would do to it. Sometimes when you're beginning an illustration, you have to think about what kind of shadows you would want to have, because that's going to determine your storytelling. And so when you have something like this, you can go ahead and start doing shadows for this, and you basically do one post at a time until you're done. You don't have to have 6 sections. If you have 4, that's fine. Now there's a reason why I made mine short, because if I make it short, then my shadows aren't going to run off my paper. So this potentially is going to have shadows on both sides of this form. And if you simply just want to watch for now, that is fine. You can just watch for now. There we go. Now the process of doing this is exactly the same as what we did here. Do one post at a time. Make sure your pencils are nice and sharp. So I have this long shadow for this plane here. Now I have to do a shadow for this plane. Now this shadow is not going to be on the opposite, it's not going to be on the back side of this. It's actually going to be on the inside. Now I'm not sure where it's going to hit yet. So we'll see. I know it's going to do this. And I know when I draw the sun through the top of this post, it's going to hit there. So I know the shadow for this post is here, but we're kind of in a dilemma, aren't we? What's our dilemma? Because we're, you know, when we learned how to draw shadows for these planes here, we knew that we draw a shadow for one post and we do it for another. So I did that here. I drew a shadow for this post and drew a shadow for that post, and then connected the two for this top edge with this vanishing point. This one's a little bit different, isn't it? Because I already drew a shadow for this one, and it's here on this back side. And now I'm drawing this one here. And I know that we already know that the top of this post, the shadow for that post is here. But how do you think we draw this? Who thinks they might know? When we drew the top of these, when we drew, let's say, the top of this post, or, I'm sorry, the top edge, the shadow for this edge here, we knew that we needed to connect these two posts together using that vanishing point. I use my left vanishing point for this plane. Okay. Okay. So the rules of perspective still follow. I did a shadow for this post, and the top of this post is here. I did a shadow for this post, and the top of this post is here. And I used 2-point perspective. I used my left vanishing point for that. So yes, I could just connect these two, and there's my shadow, and this back side of this plane is all in shadow. Okay. Theoretically, I should be able to connect the two using using this left vanishing point. And this is my shadow. See, this is a shadow for that first plane. And here's a shadow for this entire plane. Comes across here and here. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So, and also this is all in shadow too. So when you're designing shadows, do them independently. Obviously you draw each post independently, you draw each plane independently, you draw the shadows for the planes independently. And you still use the same rules of perspective to make sure that the shadows are working correctly. So even with this one, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to draw a line from the base point to the base of that post, like this, and from the sun to the top of the post. And this ends right here. Now, what kind of plane is this? What kind of plane did I draw? Is it 1 point, 2 point? What kind is it? Where are the what vanishing points did I use for this plane here? Anyone know? I didn't. Technically, it's a 1 point plane, and I used my straight edge for it. And look where the points of these shadows meet when I connect when I create the top edge for this in shadow, it's right here. Here's my shadow for it. So remember, whatever vanishing point or whatever perspective you're using to create whatever object that you are drawing or shape that you're drawing, that's going to determine what your shadow actually looks like. Because I drew this in 1-point perspective, or just created 2 verticals and 2 horizontals for that plane, the shadows for that plane, I still need to use a 180-degree angle, just like I used for these. So as I said before, draw 1 plane at a time and 1 shadow at a time. And it makes it a lot easier to accomplish. Okay, so now I have this dilemma on this one. This is a shadow I won't see. I possibly will not see. I might see an aspect of it, but it will be important for me to draw nevertheless. So this part of the shadow, I mean, since this is already drawn here, I'm not actually going to see what the back side is going to look like. But I'm not going to worry about this one anymore because I already have this post drawn. So I just need to really focus on this post here and just see what happens. I mean, I may not see any of it, so I may not even have to worry about it. Okay, so this one hits all the way down here. I'm not even going to see this shadow, so I'm not even going to worry about it. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Yeah, not even going to worry about it. Okay, but I have this backside here like I have this one here. It's similar to the previous one. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I have a feeling this is going to go right to the edge. Okay, I think I can fudge it a little bit. Okay, it's going to hit right here. It's going to go straight up. So this is the shadow for it, but the height of the shadow is determined by the sun. So I'm going to use the sun, hit the top of that post. And it runs right down there. So here's this little tiny shadow for this post here. Like that. Okay, now here's the weird thing. Kind of a weird thing. And you guys saw how I got this. This is similar to this. So we know that the sun hits the top of this post here and creates that. It creates this shadow. We know the sun hits the top of this post here and creates a shadow on the back side of this. But what happens, shouldn't we have a shadow on this side? We should, right? And one of the easiest things to do is really just think about what would the shadow do? The shadow is going to do this. It's going to have this weird angle here. But you have to remember this shadow for this plane here is on the other side. And the sun is actually going to hit here, but it has nowhere to go except to connect to where this shadow would end, which is going to be here. So it's kind of tricky with this one. And we see these angles on cardboard boxes all the time. We may not understand why it happens, but now you can see. We won't always have situations like this where it's going to have this weird angle, but and now we have this one. So it's kind of interesting, this form that didn't seem that complex to begin with. Now all of a sudden, when you slap a shadow on it, it has all sorts of drama to it. So sometimes in this class, it is just helpful, sometimes it's helpful just to watch. And because it's on video, you guys can actually watch this over and over again. All right, so the shadow for this post is here. So this corner is represented here. The corner for this shadow is represented here. And I used my right vanishing point for this. So it should have ended right here. I think there's something wrong with my drawing. Let me check this really quick. Sometimes these angles are just so short, or so thin. So it should be like this. So I'm gonna have to fudge it a little bit. Oh, I think I went a little bit shy with this original shadow. I think it was supposed to be down here. There we go. So here's my shadow for this one. Okay, so I'm going to use a kind of a super dark pencil for this. Whip out my graphite for this. So I can define this one again. There we go. It's a little bit easier to see now. So the same basic rules that I taught you in the beginning for these shadows have not changed. So you just have to think of you have to really think about the type of perspective that you're using to draw the shapes to begin with, or the forms, to guide you through drawing the shadows correctly. There we go. Okay, so go ahead and if you haven't done an accordion shape, go ahead and do that now. It doesn't have to be like super complex as this one. It doesn't have to have 6 sides. It can have 4. It doesn't have to look exactly like this too. You can do it any way you want. If you want to do a baby step and just do 3 for now and then maybe add another plane on it afterward, you can do that. So I'm going to do another one here, a smaller one. And we'll see what happens. So I added another vanishing point here for this one. Okay, so the shadow of this post goes way over here. Okay, now we have this one. Okay, so I kind of have a tricky one here. Let me show you. So this is going to my left vanishing point. This is to this vanishing point here. So I already know that the shadow for this post ends right back here behind it. This post here, this corner is represented here. As this corner is represented here, this one is represented here. And here's my shadow for this post. And I already know that in order to draw the shadow for this top edge, it would actually connect these two like this. But here's the dilemma. I know I would see this here and I would see this here, but what happens up here? So one of the things I need to think about is what the shadow, I already know that the shadow is going to run upward, it would have to. So I have to think about what this would really look like. So I have to draw the shadow as if this was transparent, but it's not. It's actually solid. So I did draw it. I drew this angle here and in here, and that we would actually see that. But it would actually run up as this hits here. We know that's going to run up vertically upward. But how do we know where it stops? That's the big dilemma. So if I were to imagine this being longer, like this. What if this plane was longer? If this plane was longer, when I draw, and if I were to draw a line to the top of this post, the top of this post would end right here. Okay, the top of this post would end right here. With that said, now I know where this top edge would be. So this corner hits here. This would run here to the left, but it's still going to crawl upward because it has to. And now if I connect these two using the right vanishing point, using this vanishing point, the 1 point, because this is what's created this one, this is what this shadow would look like here. Possibly that's what it's going to look like. Okay, now I'll draw one for this one here. Well, this one is actually going to have one on the other side, so I don't have to worry about that one. But I do have to draw this one. I have to draw a shadow for this post. Now, because I drew this in 1 point, I drew this in 2 point perspective, or I use the left vanishing point, I have to use the left vanishing point for this. So this is going to hit here, it's going to hit the wall. Obviously it's going to go vertically upward. Oh, actually no, it's not going to hit vertically upward. This is actually going to go here to this corner like that. And that's all in shadow. Well, let's just do it in 2 point perspective. Oh, we'll do it in 1 point for now. And then we'll do a couple of 2 points next to it. Okay, so just a simple 2 point plane, simple 1 point plane of a plane that actually has a roof on it, or an something that is L-shaped. And we'll execute this the exact same way. However, we need to pretend that this roof does not exist, at least for now. At least for now. So we're going to draw the shadow for these posts one at a time. And we'll execute this the exact same way. So my shadow will look something like this. So I kept my line weights, my object lines, a little bit darker, so I can differentiate the difference between the shadow and the object lines. And this is again, this is in 1-point perspective, so obviously these horizontals are true horizontals and parallel to each other and parallel to the horizon line. So there's nothing tricky about this, with the exception of seeing this roof on it. And you just simply have to pretend that it doesn't exist so you can draw these shadows right. Now, as you guys are finishing your shadow for this, I'm going to ask you guys a question. What is absolutely necessary for us to draw a shadow? What is something that we needed to have to draw the shadow correctly? Well, of course, yes, we need a light source. We need to see where the where the light source hits the horizon line. But what else? What did we need? Yes.
Where the shadow hits the surface.
Yes, where the shadow hits the surface. So what is the, now when we're drawing this roof, what is the problem? We all know where the surface is, right? Okay. So we need a post, but we don't have one. We don't have one. So what do? Well, we draw what I call an imaginary post or a preliminary post. So we have to imagine, or not imagine, we literally have to draw where the post would be if it existed. So because this is in 1-point perspective, and because this roof especially this plane is especially in 1-point perspective, we do know where that imaginary post would be because it's the opposite of this one. It's directly below it at 90 degrees. See, I keep it very, very light. In fact, I'll do this in dotted lines. I try to keep them in dotted lines. So we create an imaginary post for it, and we know how long it is because this is in 1-point perspective. So if we can keep the length identical to the post on the right, we're in a good spot. And we do the same thing for the back, as if we were drawing this whole thing as a big box or as a whole box. Now we can draw the shadows correctly. But I do understand that it does look kind of funky though, because this post, or where this imaginary post hits the ground, it looks like it would not even connect to this at all. It looks totally bizarre. But what we're after is this. All we are concerned about is where this corner would end up on this plane. Right now it's floating above this surface. We just need to know where this point is so we can actually connect it to here. And I will tell you that usually after we start doing these and you get accustomed to drawing a floating plane like this, or something that is suspended above the ground, that's when people start to really make some headway on drawing shadows, because it begins to make sense. Okay, so I'm going to draw a shadow for this imaginary post, so at least I can figure out where that corner is. So I drew a line from the sun's base point, or vanishing point, through the base of this imaginary post, and now I'm going to draw a line from the light source to the top of that post, or let's say the corner. And I could just simply connect the two, but because this is horizontal, and parallel to the horizon line, and this is in 1-point perspective, I should just simply use this. So this corner is represented here in a shadow, and now this edge here is represented here as it connects to the corner of this for this shadow down here. So I could do this in blue too. Oh, by the way, that's a tangent. I didn't design it to be that way, though it might look like it. I did. Okay, and I'll do the same thing for this rear one. For this rear corner, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And unfortunately, it winds up exactly in the same spot. I wasn't trying to do this. But this is a good this is a good exercise to learn that about when it comes to designing shadows. Have an awareness of tangents, because if there are some potential very large tangents, that could hinder the performance of or the success of your drawing, because you don't want it to look funny. This doesn't necessarily look funny. It only looks funny because we can actually see the structured approach underneath it. But totally coincidental. Okay, then you just connect everything together. And it's so cool when it comes together. It just looks so dramatic. Something as ordinary as